What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I am Andrew Zarian. I'm broadcasting live from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I've been chopping down trees all day. If you're watching the video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're listening, just imagine I'm in Calgary. I'm joined by Paul Tharada, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good, actually.
Recovered? Did you eat a lot?
I did.
You did.
I got to stop taking a shower before this show. My hair always looks like a rat's nest when I get out of there.
Paul, you look great. You look wonderful.
Nothing more depressing. Anyway, Thanksgiving was good. How was yours?
Excellent, actually. I ate way too much. I drank a lot. Family members got into a drunken fight, as they do every single year, so everything was perfect.
Yes.
That's how it works here. It was actually not bad. It was actually smaller than most years. We normally do like this big thing, either at my house or my wife's mother's house, but we did something small at her aunt's because her other house burnt down, and it's a whole thing. So people were not in the Thanksgiving mood. It was a whole thing here, but it was fine. It was all right. I did not do any Black Friday shopping. I don't know about you. Did you line up at the stores to do any kind of shopping? I know.
No.
You did, but we were talking about this, that you might do it.
Yep.
And you decided not to.
Yeah, most of the time this sounds like a great idea, but you know what happens? See, on Thanksgiving we have a tradition. My friends and I, we go to a local bar and we have a bagels and beer event in the morning. So by the time Thanksgiving winds down later in the day, I'm pretty much, spent.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So no, and plus the other issue is just I really don't need anything, and like most Americans, I have a web browser on my computer, and I could just shop that way, and it just works. And so I actually ordered some stuff over the weekend for Christmas, and most of it's already arrived. That's the wonder of the internet.
I actually wanted to ask you this question because you may know the answer to this. Every year we see these crazy deals for TVs, right? It's all about the TV, 50-inch 720p TV. They're about a couple years old, but, I saw one. I think Walmart had a Black Friday deal. It was a 50-inch 720p Samsung Plasma for like $300.
Yep.
What is the average lifespan of a television nowadays? Because every year they're doing these crazy deals. Are people just stockpiling on televisions every single year? Is that what we've become?
So I don't remember if I mentioned this to you or not, but sometime in the past year, we bought a relatively cheap, TV, because the TV we had purchased previously, which was very expensive, had died. And after looking at them and comparing quality and all that kind of stuff, my wife and I basically just decided, look, we're going to spend less on this thing, and if it lasts a year or 2 years, we've gotten our money's worth out of it.
What brand was it?
It's like a what is it? Is it a Vizio or
was it like
something? It's one of those like Costco brands,
Okay.
And you can go into the store and you see them all side by side. And we played around with them, and it was, $400 or $500 less than a reasonable Samsung TV or whatever decent TV they have there. And that's just so they are sort of disposable, except for the fact that, speaking literally, they're not disposable in the slightest, right? Because these things contain all kinds of dangerous chemicals and stuff like that. Yeah. So. I have two dead LCD or plasma type TVs down in my cellar right now. In fact, that's one of those things we got to figure out.
I was about to go buy some TVs, but you know what was interesting? I was looking at the deals, and I got a bunch of emails from last week's show. We were talking about some of these TV deals and how some of them are older televisions, and most people, you're buying a TV that's probably 3-4 years old, and it's been sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And I got an email from some guy. And he goes, you and Paul have a point because every TV that he saw that he wanted had only one HDMI port in the back.
Yeah.
And that, that's something obviously that has changed over the last couple of years. Now it's like an infinite amount of HDMI ports, a USB port, an Ethernet jack. So they're adding more and more to these TVs. You said Vizio and brought up a funny story. At Thanksgiving this year, we were sitting down at the table, and every year we go through a circular, and a relative of mine goes, "Oh, there's a great deal on a TV. It's a Vioxx, and it's like $299." I'm like, "It's a Vioxx, huh?" They go, "Yeah." I'm like, that's funny because I thought they took those off the market. She goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It was giving people heart attacks," and she had no idea what I was talking about.
Nice,
no clue. So Vizio's good. I've seen a lot of Westinghouse televisions on the market.
Yep.
Like I don't know if it's me, but when I see that, I'm like, ugh. I really don't want it.
Obviously, from a style perspective or whatever, you can buy a really nice high-end TV like one of the Sony Bravia types or a nice Samsung or whatever, and you're going to get a really thin bezel around it, and you can get really large screen sizes and all that stuff. And so the machine I have, the one I bought, which is probably a Vizio, has a fairly thick bezel around it. It's a little bigger, a little heavier, that kind of thing. But again, it's just like, who cares? I mean, it just doesn't matter. And I really don't believe that those expensive TVs are going to last 5 or 6 years anyway.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that as technology changes, we're going to move into some HD plus format, whatever they're calling that, and things are going to evolve yet again. So I'm comfortable with what we got. And again, if I get even a year out of it, I think would be enough. But hopefully, up to 2 years, perfect.
I have a Hitachi in my living room that I got in 2002, and I paid $7,000 for it, and it still works.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal. No burn in, nothing. I have a Samsung that I bought in 2006, and I've had to open it up and actually solder new capacitors to the motherboard on that thing because it just goes. And it's a Samsung. It's a newer TV, and that's going too. So you may have a point. The cheaper you go, it doesn't really matter at this point because they're disposable. Every couple of years, if they last you 5 years, you get another TV for $400 or $500 in 5 years.
Right.
So it kind of works. We're going to do something different today. We're going to start the show, our first topic, with our Audible pick of the week. And the reason why we're doing that is kind of going to go. It's going to lead into a discussion, and which will probably continue throughout the entire show. I want to go into this first. And Paul, you have your Audible pick of the week, and I've actually read this book. It was fascinating. We discussed it when it came out last year. Right. And you recently revisited the book. So tell us about the book. Tell us what book it is, what your Audible pick of the week is.
Right. So as everyone who listens to this knows, I'm a huge Apple fan.
Huge.
And I've always loved the company and especially their executives. And
who is your third favorite executive of Apple? Because we know your first two.
Right? Really? Do we?
I don't know.
John Scully.
Yeah.
Who was the CEO after John Scully? I can't think of that guy's name. The German guy.
I'm sure the chat is going to know.
Yeah, his nickname was the Diesel, and I can't think of his name anyway. So but the book itself is obviously Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, the official biography. It's on sale at Audible, I think. If you look this thing up, I think it's like $3.99. So if you have an Audible account, is that what it says for you? No, it doesn't.
Well, I'm not logged in.
Okay.
So if you log in, it'll probably be.
I don't know why it was so cheap, but anyway, it's a fascinating story about a fascinating guy, and I think the one thing I'd like to just get across about Steve Jobs is that, regardless of what you think of the guy, you can love him or hate him or be ambivalent about it or whatever. Obviously, he presided over the most amazing corporate turnaround in history, and more important for us, presided over the technology company that has led the way for the past decade and really innovated in interesting ways and set this market in a completely different direction. So, when you look at things like Xbox Music or Microsoft Surface and all that stuff, all that stuff, Windows 8, all of it happened because of Steve Jobs. It just did. There's no other way to say it. So his story is fascinating, and there are fascinating aspects to his story. And I think it was Tim Cook who had said in the book or through the book that you're presiding over this company that is one of the most powerful at the time companies on earth, and you're taking these crazy risks which is something that most people would never do, and really just changing things up again and again and again. And the part I just listened to last night was discussing these meetings they would have about, it was sort of an all products meeting. And it was a way to bring in the heads of all of the parts of the company at Apple and say, this is what the next 2 versions of these products that we make are going to be, and what new things should we be doing, right? And it would give all of the people in the company an interesting and insightful look at where the company was heading. And you get this feeling that this was a company that was all running in the same direction, right? That everyone there was heading for the same goal. They got it. Now, Apple may or may not be a different company now. It doesn't really matter. But when you compare this to Microsoft, Michael Spindler, thank you.
Yeah,
Microsoft is, I couldn't think of his name. He was pretty forgettable. Microsoft is a complete opposite, right? Microsoft is the siloed parts of the company that actually, there's a lot of infighting. They fight against each other. They have secrets from each other. You know, I've complained a lot about the lack of transparency, the secrecy issues that I have with various parts of Microsoft. They do this to each other inside of Microsoft. And so one of the problems I have with Microsoft these days is just that they fail where Apple succeeds. And by the way, the reverse is also true. Apple also fails where Microsoft succeeds.
And the bureaucracy at Apple is through the roof. I just feel that they don't go against each other like other companies would.
Okay, sure. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there's a really simplistic thing you can say about Apple products, which is that they don't do everything, but the things that they do really well. And it's, by the way, it's generally true. I mean, obviously you can take specific exceptions to that and so forth. But yeah, it's give you like the most oddball, basic example of what I'm talking about. An iPad doesn't come with expandable memory. There's no USB port. You can't plug in a hard drive to it. You can't plug in external storage. You can't do that kind of thing. A lot of people would like that. Apple doesn't offer it. Their response to you is, if you want more storage, buy an iPad with more storage. You know, Microsoft releases a Surface. Now, it's a completely different way of doing things. The Surface does have a USB port, so you can plug in a hard drive. And the Surface has a micro SD port, so you can plug in additional storage up to 64 gigabytes. And so even though the device itself has kind of a minimal amount of storage on the device, 32 or 64 gigs, with a lot of that taken up by the OS, you can expand it. But Microsoft being Microsoft, they don't do it right. They don't make it easy to integrate that storage into the device at all. It's impossible or very difficult to make the content on there appear in the apps that you want to use them with.
So what's better, not to offer it, or to offer it and not to offer it, at its full potential?
Exactly. And so these are 2 completely different ways of doing things. Both of them are frankly wrong in a way, I think, right? You know, very specific examples. I mean, we're going from really high level to really low level, or reverse, I guess. But it shows you the differences in the company and the companies. And when I listen to this book and I think about this stuff, you know, of course I deal with Microsoft, and so I compare it to what I know about Microsoft. And it's fascinating to me, the differences between the 2 companies and the way they do things. You know, the Steven Sinofsky, the guy who just left Microsoft, was touted by many as being a sort of Steve Jobs type person. I would make the argument that him and Steve Jobs were in fact completely different individuals, that like Apple and Microsoft, both were successful in certain areas that the other person was unsuccessful in. Very interesting how different they were. Steve Jobs was kind of a visionary designer type, all self-taught. Steve Sinofsky was an engineer and was, very regimental like that. So completely different kinds of people. But exemplifying the differences between those 2 companies, very, very interesting. So again, the Steve Jobs biography, I really do recommend it to everyone listening to this, whether you like Steve Jobs or hate Steve Jobs or just don't care one way or the other. If you care about technology, his story
is fascinating.
Is the story of the past decade. It is everything that has happened. I look around my office at all of the stuff there's a tablet in front of me that would not exist if it wasn't for Steve Jobs. The Kindle would not exist if it wasn't for Steve Jobs. It goes on and on and on. Like, he just influenced everything. Nintendo this week shipped a Wii U, right, which we'll discuss later, that has a touchscreen that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Steve Jobs.
Sure.
It's just amazing. And so eventually obviously time will go by and his influence will wane and we will move on to some next thing. But we are still in that era that was determined by and influenced heavily by Steve Jobs. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's extremely fascinating. We're going to continue this discussion, but I do want to remind people, if you want to purchase the book, you could do it on Audible. You could go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. It should be WTT. I don't know why it's still Andrew. I have no idea why they did that. I got to change that. /Andrew, and you could get the book for free. And are you listening to the abridged or unabridged version?
Oh, I hope that's not what it is.
No, this is unabridged.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
I have unabridged, yeah.
Yeah, and I recommend...
Are you saying there is an abridged version?
There is, and it's not worth it. So my wife got the abridged version. I got the unabridged, and I was like, "Oh, what about this part?" And they're leaving major parts out. So go with the unabridged version.
And by the way, so let's say you don't care about Steve Jobs, right? You just don't care about him as an individual, or you don't care about the parts of the story that have nothing to do with technology, right? Some of the chapters in this book obviously deal with his health issues or personal issues.
He was dating Joan Baez.
Okay, but some of the stuff obviously deals with stuff from a long time ago. I mean, I'm mostly interested in the past. I would say 15 years. You know, from the time he came back to Apple to the present, you know, to the end of his life. There's obviously chapters that deal with his cancer reoccurrences and so forth. But all of the stuff that's in there, that's about technology, about the Mac stuff that they did, the iPod stuff, obviously iPhone, iPad, and so forth. It's just fascinating, and I think it's required for anyone in this industry to understand it. And this is a great book. It's just
That's my mic arm creaking every time I move it. Audiblepodcast.com/Andrew, and you get your free audiobook. So now we can go into the real discussion about this. We spoke about, Steve Jobs' influence on the tech, I guess, category, tech market in general, and the influence that it has on Apple. But now we're starting to see the cracks in this. And one of the first things that I saw, and I said, you know what? This is a perfect example of life after Steve Jobs, and it's the MacBook Pro with the HDMI port.
Really?
That is the perfect example of something Steve Jobs would have never done. And I'll tell you why. Because they put 2 Thunderbolt ports on this thing.
Yep.
And they put an HDMI port on it. Why would they do that?
Why would they put HDMI?
If you have 2 Thunderbolt ports. I mean, I understand why everybody else does it. I just don't understand why this is not something Apple would have done.
Stick with their own stuff, thus pushing their own stuff. Whereas HDMI is just some kind of a...
I'm having a difficult time with this mic arm. It's like falling on me. I think it's just going to collapse mid-show. I don't think they would have done this if Steve was still in power. I don't think they would have possibly gone thicker with the iPad, with the 4G, if Steve was in power. You're starting to see these little things here and there. And I don't know if that's just a reflection of the times changing, or that's a reflection of, okay, Steve Jobs is no longer here, we're going to do things a little different. Yeah.
Well, both of those things are true, right? I mean, both of those things have to happen. I don't really, I want to be clear. I don't really care in some ways what Apple's strategy is or where they go, what they do. I mean, personally, their influence cannot be overstated. I mean, it's just, and despite the fact that Steve Jobs is gone, what they continue to do will have ramifications. Going forward. It's just the way it is. I mean, Microsoft released Windows 8 and the Surface, all influenced by Apple. Microsoft released Xbox Music and Xbox Video, which are, obviously continuations of the Zune stuff, but would never exist without Apple, of course.
But talk about Xbox, the Surface app for iPad, amazing.
Mm-hmm. The what app?
Surface
app for iPad.
Yeah, Xbox Surface for the
iPad. You mean the Smart Glass?
Smart Glass. There you go. I don't know why I said Surface.
Yep.
Smart Glass. It's a great app.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah, and I think that's I've been meaning to write an article like this. It's kind of a Microsoft plus iPad or Microsoft plus Android type article where Microsoft is doing this multi-platform thing with a lot of its own platforms where they are pushing the stuff out to iOS and Android. And they'll be doing this with Office soon as well. And so as an iPad user, you can take advantage. They have like things like Connectimals and silly things like that. They obviously have Exchange Active Sync support for the Outlook.com stuff and all that. But the stuff that's really truly core and central to their consumer and business strategies, you're going to be able to access that stuff on the iPad. There's going to be a SharePoint app, on iPad. There's Office is coming as well. So that stuff is really fascinating to me because it points to something that a lot of people out in the industry have been saying, and it shows that Microsoft knows it to be true, which is that we are heading toward this very, very heterogeneous future where computing used to be Windows PCs. And today computing is, 5 different kinds of tablets, 7 different kinds of smartphones, all kinds of different computers. This is all kinds of stuff. And it's just a different world.
This actually kind of reflects on a blog post that you had on winsuperside.com about the cloud and how everything is headed to the cloud. And yesterday I was speaking to my wife. My wife got, at her new job, they gave her, she's getting an iPad apparently. She's getting a laptop and she has a desktop. And she goes, you know what I need? They're not giving me Office.
Right.
I need Office. And she goes, you know what I really wish I could do with Office? All my files could be on like every device I'm on. I'm like, something. I'm like, you could do that
there
now.
was some way.
I'm like, yeah, you could do that. And she was blown away by this. She's not really involved in technology. She's involved, I guess, through me. But
sure,
she's not really connected as much to the latest and greatest things. But I blew her mind when I told her, no, everything is now synced up.
This is how you know this stuff is important, because I did the same thing with my wife with SkyDrive, where I said, look, I realize you typically use a computer, but the truth is, you move around a little bit. You can pick up a laptop, whatever. We go on trips. Maybe I bring my computer and you don't want to bring a computer. One way that you can ensure that your stuff is always available, instead of bringing a thumb drive with her, which is something she's done on previous trips, just put it in SkyDrive. It's just always there. And my wife, like yours, is not into technology, doesn't care about this stuff. But you explained it in this way, and it's like, yes, that makes sense. It's just immediately apparent why that makes sense. And it's just obvious. I've got my friend Chris, who I always use as this example, is someone who doesn't care about technology per se. But I knew the day that he bought a PC, and this is many years ago now, was a big day for the world, because that meant like this completely normal people see the value in this thing that, I would have had, like when I was back in high school or as a younger person, was really into computers and was seen as a nerd for being into computers.
Yeah.
Today it's just, today actually we moved past computers, but we moved first to the point where computers were just a completely normal thing for anyone to have, and a very valuable and obvious thing that anyone would want. And now we can say the same thing about tablets or about smartphones and about these other devices, that computing is becoming more and more
mainstream.
Mainstream doesn't even say it. It's like, it's just pervasive. It's just part of life.
But you know what's fascinating? Like we'll bitch and moan about the tiniest things. We'll be like, I hate Android because the 3 apps that I really need, they crash on me every now and then. When to some normal person, they're like, oh, okay, I just restarted, it's fine. But like a simple thing like, I want my Office files to be on every computer that I have that could support Office. I want access to those files. I want it on the cloud. How do I do it? Before, I guess, Microsoft, integrating everything in the cloud, it was still, you got to have a Dropbox and you got to sync your Dropbox. And it was like third-party stuff. Yeah. It seems like such a simple concept to, okay, if I have files here and I have a program here, I should have the same program here and the same files. And I could access it everywhere. And
yes.
I'm at the website right now, and by the way, this is not an ad for Office, the latest version, so I'm just disclosing that.
Sure it is.
But I'm here, and you could see they make it simple. You go home, and then they explain. Oh, look, you could put it on 5 computers. Everything is on the cloud, and look at what you get. You could try it. Simple.
Yeah.
And to someone like my wife, she was like, "Wow, this is amazing. This is like what I want."
Yeah. It is what you want.
But why does it take so long for something like this to happen?
Well, for starters, as soon as we have a conversation like this, I'm going to receive emails from half of Australia, because there are places in the world that don't have pervasive broadband access or inexpensive broadband access. And obviously the cloud stuff sort of requires that. I say sort of because, I actually think that it's funny. I had written this some time ago, sort of an article about sync versus backup. That I think people don't quite understand yet that when we talk about putting stuff in the cloud, that doesn't mean that you open Word and you hit some file up in the cloud somewhere and you're maintaining this live connection to the service, and that you're editing a folder that's up on some FTP site in the cloud. Like, it's a sync thing. You're working with it locally. It is syncing it up to the cloud in the background as you work, but you unplug the computer or you unplug the internet. That doesn't mean you lose the file. It's not how it works. I think that's one of the critical aspects of it, because even in a place that has a good connection, like where we live, the internet can be dicey sometimes. It's not a good quality of service necessarily. Sometimes you're disconnected, and it like the internet itself, it has evolved to accommodate these outages. That it understands that. And I think that's a big aspect of it. The other thing is that I talked about my friend Chris, but I mean, and again, I just always use him as that example. But as this stuff goes mainstream, the people who are like you and I, the people listening to this podcast, also need to understand that in many ways we get nudged out, and that the way that we do things is not necessarily the right way to do things too, right? And what I mean by that is people like us, people who adopt this stuff early, people who know it's coming before it gets there, who care about the stuff, we also tend to overthink things a little bit, and I've spent many years. We talk about music a lot on this podcast. Moving my carefully curated MP3 collection from computer to computer, from hard drive to hard drive, making sure it's always backed up. I've always had these home servers or servers before that. Actually, now I've moved beyond home servers where data is replicated. It's backed up to services. It's backed up over here.
And by the way, I'm still one of these people that hoards my music on a hard drive, and I don't have a cloud backup.
Yeah, well, you should. Right. So I think there's a thing with certain types of data where it's weird. It's not a cloud backup. It's just in the cloud, and it's weird. I guess the thing I've been thinking about lately is, old days, you have a laptop or you have a computer. Someone tells you need to back up. So you buy a USB hard drive, and that gives you something. It gives you a backup that is on a different physical device, so that if the hard drive in your computer dies, well, at least you've got that other thing. Yeah. And then the next step beyond that is, well, how about a different computer in the house? You could get like a home server or a Windows server. You could do centralized PC backup, centralizing it all in one location. It's not just a device. It's an entire, server that can do restores and all that kind of stuff. And it's a little more sophisticated. Then the next step beyond that is obviously get it outside of your house, back it up to Carbonite or some other online service, whatever it is. But in all these cases, the data, the main copy of it, if you will, is still right in front of you. It's on that one device. Yeah. And I have data backups going back to 1995, actually 1993-ish, somewhere around there, almost 20 years worth of data backups, terabytes of data that I replicate across drives locally here on my server, up to cloud services to back them up and so forth. And it occurs to me that maybe I've got this backwards, that the backup shouldn't be in the cloud. The backup, the data should just be in the cloud.
And the backup should be local.
Yeah, or if not, or not at all.
Or not at all,
that a lot of the data that I've so carefully been curating, like that MP3 collection or this almost 20 years worth of other data, I never access, Even the home movies of my kids, I mean, how often do you look at that stuff? It's important for it to be replicated, I get that, but I sort of am starting to think that I've got it backwards. And it's not like I don't mean to say I was wrong the whole time. I mean, technology is now evolving. So music, for example, a lot of people will disagree with this because, again, people who listen to this will want to micromanage their collections and so forth. But, there are a lot of, I did this for years, you copy, like I'm going on a trip, I copy the master copy of my music collection over to my laptop. It takes an hour or whatever it is. I have to go fix all the album art because, I use Zune for those devices. I use iTunes for those devices.
And God forbid, Crosby, Stills, and Nash doesn't have the proper album art.
Yes, I'm completely anal retentive about that. I cannot stand for that not to be right. And it's just dumb. It's just dumb. And so music is an obvious one because now we have solutions. There are things like iTunes Match. There's Google music. There is Amazon Cloud Player.
So do you think
which is
that
the one
any
I
of them
use.
are doing it right, or do you think they're still missing something? Because I recently had the discussion with somebody about Dropbox, and
Right.
the thing that
I have a
Dropbox-
friend who, by the way, I have a friend who uses Dropbox for music.
Okay. So, but here's what I don't like about Dropbox. So you put everything on Dropbox, and you install the Dropbox app. So now it creates a Dropbox folder on your computer, and it's great because you drag a file, you put it there, it's on the cloud, you don't have to think about it. But it's also downloading it as a backup on your computer.
Right.
So
Right. It's syncing it.
it's syncing it. So whatever is on the cloud is now on that computer. I would love
here's the big issue.
I would love for it to create like a shortcut to that, and it only when
And
you
you actually
access
access the
it
web folder. Yeah,
and you
yeah.
access the web folder. That would be
Some
phenomenal.
people want that, some people don't, right? Because when you have that, what you miss is offline access. I mean, that's the issue. It depends on the stuff, right? I mean, so SkyDrive just added, I almost said incremental sync. They added, I don't know what they call it. They added the ability to sync only certain folders to your computer. So that's nice because you can have folders up in SkyDrive that contain all of this data that you don't need on your computer, and you can only sync the stuff down that you do need. So that's cool. That's one step. SkyDrive doesn't go far enough from a storage perspective to hold all of my stuff, so that's not so good. But just looking at just music, I mean, it's very easy for me to look at those three services and tell you what they're all missing because none of them are perfect. But it's again like it's not clear to me why they need to be perfect.
Yeah.
So for example, Google Music has a lot of storage, and you can put your whole collection up there, but you have to copy your whole collection up there. They don't do music matching. So your music is whatever it is. You copy it up. It's up in their cloud storage, and you can access it. And so that's fine. I think that's actually pretty good. Amazon does matching. You basically have to pay for it. So it's $25 a year unless you have
I paid it and I never used it.
I use it all the time,
Do you?
but whatever. They have playlist support. They'll import playlists from Windows Media Player from iTunes, and so that's nice. If you've been doing that all along, you can do that one-time import, and it all goes up, and they'll match, and so you'll have a higher quality version of your collection in the cloud, assuming it all works. And obviously, I spent a lot of time working on that, like an idiot. They don't have smart playlists. They don't have dynamic playlists, which is a little bit of a problem, but pretty good. That's the one I use. I like it. And then, of course, the Apple one is iTunes Match, which is great. It works fine. You have to use iTunes on the PC, which I hate, which is the reason I don't use it. The Amazon one, they have a web client, which I prefer. And the iTunes stuff is locked to Apple devices. There's no iTunes application on other devices like Android or Windows Phone, whereas on it varies from ecosystem to ecosystem, but Amazon has an iOS app. They have an Android app. Obviously, it works on the Kindle stuff, and it works on PC. So that's the one I use. But, again, it's not perfect. The problem is anyone who has been anal retentive about their music collection will listen to this and say, and will immediately start with, yeah, but doesn't have this, doesn't have this, it doesn't do this, doesn't have this.
Or
doesn't
you
have
could do
this.
Spotify, which everything is on the cloud.
That's so completely different service,
Yeah.
right? So there are services like Spotify and Pandora, which is sort of like radio, stuff and all that. Going into this year, I had really hoped to just adopt the Xbox stuff because the Xbox Music service purports to do all of this stuff together. It has the radio type services. It has the ability to create playlists in the cloud that could sort of sync between all the devices, even though they don't really work that way.
The Xbox stuff.
The Xbox. Okay. It's going to have music matching eventually. It sort of has it today in Windows 8. It doesn't work at all, but whatever. It's a disaster. I mean, obviously the way music matching is supposed to work is you say, hi service, here's my collection. Match this. And it churns for a while, and then it spits out your collection in the cloud. You pay for it or you don't. However they do it, whatever. The way the Xbox One works right now in Windows 8 is you match it on an album-by-album basis.
Oh, boy.
And you have to correct the songs. And part of the problem I had, like an idiot, because, again, I micromanage this, is I named songs in a certain way. I tried to make it consistent across all the different albums and everything. So when Xbox Music, or actually Amazon and iTunes handled it really well, but when Xbox Music looks at my music, it has no idea what this stuff is. So and it's easy because it's one album at a time, but that also means it's time consuming. And so when you try to match, it looks at this thing and says, I don't know what this is. Or I think it's this, and it's not that. and you go through this remediation process. I would spend the rest of my life doing exactly what I just told you I don't want to do, which is micromanage my music. And so I look at Xbox Music from a high level and I think this is what I want, but implementation wise, it's just not even close to there. So I can't use it. I just can't use it.
A couple weeks ago, we spoke about TuneUp, that auto tagging service.
Yeah.
And it was great, but what I've realized it added certain albums. Like, let's say I had a Led Zeppelin album.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it took it away from the original album it was associated to, and it put it to like a compilation album.
And
it screwed everything up because now iTunes does not recognize that compilation album.
Right.
Amazon does, but iTunes doesn't. So iTunes has no idea what album that is. So if I want to do iTunes Match, it's going to be like, hey, listen, I have no idea what this is. So it's a little wacky.
It's painful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these inconsistencies, obviously, and we're nitpicking here, but I think it has to do with possession, right? Because when it comes to pictures, right, these are my pictures. Everybody has them on their hard drive and they back it up on a DVD, but I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody putting their pictures on the cloud. That's where you keep it, and you access it only on the cloud. I don't know anybody doing that. What I've been doing.
But you know why?
Why?
But because it's just not pervasively available yet. So
you think it's a pain in the ass thing to like go and dig those pictures from the cloud?
Actually, the way things are right now, if let's say you had I have a Windows Phone, right? With Windows Phone 8, it will automatically upload all of my photos in original quality to SkyDrive, but only over Wi-Fi. That's how this thing works. So even if I had unlimited data, there's no configuration change I could make that would make that happen over 4G, but whatever. Okay, so fine, over Wi-Fi. What that means to me is I don't necessarily ever have to sync this thing to a PC and import those photos and name them in some way and upload them to the services I use, right? I can share them from Facebook right from the phone, which is typically these days how I do share photos with people. The problem is that SkyDrive storage thing, right? In other words, I don't have an interface where I can go to easily on my TV and view my photos on SkyDrive, right? So the thing that uploads my photos isn't connected to the place where maybe I would like to enjoy the photos. But that's like the last mile thing. And the very top of this, I talked about how Apple does things one way and Microsoft does things another way. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Microsoft doesn't know how to finish the job. So they added this feature that everyone's been talking about, that everyone wanted, upload the photos in native resolution, and you have no way to enjoy them in any way that makes any sense. Whereas Apple also does this, by the way, as you probably know, through whatever their service is called, the photo stream thing. When you turn on your Apple TV at home, because you're using all Apple products, I guarantee you that thing works really well.
Let me ask you, how do you back up your photos on your camera, on your phone?
So actually, the way
I'll tell you how I'm doing it.
Okay, so the thing is, my phone is not actually my real camera, like my big camera, right? Like my event camera. Like when my daughter's birthday occurs, I don't take pictures with the Windows Phone. I take pictures with the camera, but whatever. So my camera obviously is a chronological history of everything I've done since I bought the camera. It is all uploaded automatically to SkyDrive, like I was saying. But every time I connect it to any PC, those photos are also imported to the PC. The ones I want to save, I do have a photo collection on my home server that's backed up wherever. I take pictures off of that and I put them into dated folders, and so they're in some kind of a proper chronology. I don't do it for every single photo, but I do it for the ones that are good and are memorable for whatever reason. So
pretty much I do the same exact thing with Dropbox. But what I've done, because my wife, her biggest complaint is, oh my God, I had all these photos. I took it to Verizon. They had to wipe everything off my phone, or they gave me a new phone, and now I don't have those pictures anymore. Because guess what? On the iPhone, there's no SD drive or anything like that. So I set up Dropbox on both our phones, and I assigned it a certain folder. So every time we take a picture, it automatically uploads it to my Dropbox.
Yeah.
And there are services, I think it's called iFit, and you could actually have any picture you upload to Facebook and any picture you're tagged in Facebook to download and put it in your Dropbox folder.
Right.
If it, not iFit. called if it. So
Okay.
if Facebook if Facebook tags me in a picture, it'll upload it to my Dropbox. It's a great app, and I have it set up that way. And guess what happened? She broke her phone. She broke her screen. We took it to Apple. They gave her a new phone, and she goes, "Oh my God, all my pictures. I haven't set up iCloud on that thing." I go, "Don't worry, it's all at home." And I took all the pictures and I just put them on her phone, and it's like it never happened. But I think we have to get used to pushing everything to the cloud. We don't need to hoard our data anymore.
Right. Actually, hoarding is a great word because that's what it is.
I mean, it was the
hoarding.
same with email, right? For years, I've had this discussion with family members.
Oh my God.
They want to use Outlook. I have a family member, and they're still
Yes.
using Outlook Express. They use Outlook Express. They refuse to use Gmail because they say, well, I want my files here. I want my emails here. What if something happens? Because somebody probably told them, well, if Gmail ever goes away, you're not going to have your emails anymore, and they panic. So people are now hoarding emails, and it still happens. But I think we just, after 10 years of, Google being around dominantly and people really using it, it's taken about 10 years, about a decade for people to get out of this mindset of, okay, I got to have Outlook installed and have all my emails here.
Listen, I get emails almost every day from people who say, so I got this Windows 8 thing, and it's got this mail app, and okay, whatever, but how do I get my PST file into that? And it's like, guys, but Outlook is a beautiful example of the old way of doing things, where one copy of Outlook sitting on one computer with one PST file was the center of your universe. This is part of the Steve Jobs story, by the way. Remember when he did the digital media hub thing, which Microsoft also did, where in the beginning he said the Mac is the center of the hub. All these devices sit around it: your camera, your scanner, your printer, whatever. Over time, they evolved it to say the computer is not at the middle of that thing anymore. The cloud is at the middle of that. And so Apple's version of that is iCloud, but whatever. But the Mac is now one of those endpoints. This is exactly the way virtually everything should be these days. Your PC is not the center where all of your data is. It's all in the cloud or some collection of clouds, because unfortunately, as I discovered with Xbox Music, it's a nice thought that we could have one place where this might all be, but we might have multiple clouds. We might use SkyDrive for data, or Dropbox if you want to use that. We might use Google Drive, whatever. We might use Google Music or Amazon or Apple for music. We might use something else for something else.
Yeah.
There's different places to put stuff. By the way, I could put I've not actually looked into this, but I assume if I wanted to, I could put my home movies up on YouTube and mark them as private or something, right? Couldn't I do that?
Sure.
So no one could see them? Why am I storing tapes in a drawer here, Andrew? When there is the biggest collection of video, whatever online, that I could then share that video with people in my family and they could access it from anywhere. Why do I hoard these things?
I think it has to do with possessions. I think we're just so used to having things where it almost feels like giving it away to a service, putting it away. It's not here anymore. And I'll tell you, you know what changed my entire opinion on cloud email and the cloud? Probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was one of these people that said, I don't want to use Gmail. I like Outlook. I had Outlook set up in folders, and I had my PST file, and I would back it up. I had a hard drive failure, and my backup was on a partition drive, and I had a RAID fall apart on me. It was a RAID 0, and the RAID fell apart. And guess what happens if a RAID goes away? You lose everything.
Sure.
I lost everything because the RAID controller failed on the motherboard. It destroyed the hard drive. It was a whole issue here. I lost everything. I lost all my emails from let's say 7-8 years worth of email. I lost all my pictures. I lost all my videos, everything. My contacts list was in Outlook, and I lost that too. And I stood back, and I'm like, why did I do this? I could have had everything on the cloud. I could have had everything in Gmail or even Hotmail at that point. If I was in Hotmail, I would have been better off than I was with Outlook. And I never looked back.
You can apply this to lots of things. When my wife and I moved across the country to Phoenix back in 1993, we eventually brought with us, 19 boxes of books or some crazy thing. Those things sat in storage for years. They eventually made their way to Phoenix. They sat in a corner of our living room for a while. They actually, I don't think were ever unpacked. They were shipped back to Boston when we moved back. They sat in a corner. They eventually went up on a wall, and then we eventually got rid of them. We sold them or gave them away, whatever we did. You know, I don't have one right here, but you know what a Kindle device looks like. It's small. That device can hold more books than I've ever owned, and it can do so in a device. And actually, it's nice. It's a device. Actually, it's in the cloud, of course. It's all up at Amazon's cloud. But the device itself, which you can replace at any time, is this inexpensive little tiny thing. It's wonderful. It's a thing that you don't have to have around. You know, I look at the Best Buy circular on Sundays, and they still sell these things. They sell crazy box sets for DVDs and Blu-rays. That, for example, there was one for Game of Thrones that had a dragon egg in it, like a fake plastic, stupid.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What is that? Like what? Like what is wrong with people?
Do you want to know the best one ever? The Scarface one with the Coke mirror.
No, fantastic. Yeah, beautiful.
I'm not exaggerating. There was a little mirror. There was a money clip, and I forgot what else. There was something else. Probably like a razor blade.
And I know people who collect this stuff. They
love it. People love it.
Yeah, and so this is an anti-hoarding thing in a way. It's like this is something we need to. It's tough because we generationally have bridged the gap between the old way of doing things and now this new way of doing things. And so when you approach it from the past, it's hard, I think, to kind of give this stuff up. But you know, when I bought some music on Amazon the other day, and one of the things you can do when you do this is you go up to Amazon's website, you go to the MP3 store, find what you want, you click buy. Yes, you could download it if you want.
Well, someone in chat brings up an interesting point.
Now it's just there.
GFQ viewer, and this is why you guys should change your name. GFQ viewer 2658 says there's a genuine appreciation for physical media. Audiophiles love CDs for high fidelity.
That's ludicrous.
But no, I can
No,
understand that.
I can't.
The same thing goes for a Blu-ray, right? Most people aren't downloading.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me give you this example, okay? To play devil's advocate. Yep. Blu-ray DVDs, Blu-ray discs.
Yep.
Most people are not streaming 1080p video. And even if they are, the bitrate is probably below what you're going to get with a Blu-ray.
Probably.
So how about those people?
But how about those people? I really don't. I'm sorry. Like I said, I have this Vizio thing, so obviously my perception is probably skewed, but 1080p, 47 inches, whatever the hell it is. I do iTunes HD streaming over this thing. I do Amazon HD streaming. I do Xbox HD streaming, which is wonderful, by the way. It looks beautiful. And I played Blu-ray. I get it. I play the Blu-ray version of, it was the first James Bond movie with the current James Bond, Casino Royale. It's beautiful. But I have Casino Royale on iTunes as well. And guess what? It's beautiful. And this argument against, well, you don't understand what you're missing when you have like a 200, whatever it is, a 256K AAC file or MP3 file compared to a CD. Like, okay, okay, whatever. But the places where I listen to music, in my office, in my car, at the gym, when I'm working out, on a plane, whatever. To me, the convenience of being able to do that in all those different places well outweighs whatever perceived benefit of some sort of lossless or perfect quality.
Well,
whatever.
I think we've gotten used to the concept of availability rather than quality. We would rather look at the MP3. The MP3 is a perfect example. People would listen to 32 kilobit, 32.
But I don't think the quality is actually an issue. I think that's baloney. I think it was true in the beginning. If you had like a 128K MP3 file, yeah, it's not CD quality. I got that. But when I buy music today from Amazon or iTunes or whatever, I'm not actually saying it's technically just as good. But we've reached a point where good enough is, in fact, literally good enough. That to my ears, to my eyes, these things are not any different. I'm sorry, they're just not. And yes, technically, I'm sure that a Blu-ray connected to the right stereo and blah, 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 blah is better. But that is not how 99% of people enjoy entertainment. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've gotten used to the concept of going on Netflix on our TV and watching the 720p stream at 1 megabit or whatever it is. It's not the best quality, but guess what? It looks pretty damn good.
My sister, who actually it was a story in her own right, but she was over the weekend and made a comment about how good the TV looked. For example, what was on the TV was an on-demand version of Red Wings, which was streaming over the internet, by the way, because that's how Fios does it. And she was actually impressed by how good it looked. She actually commented on it. She also then took home a tablet. She had said to me that she wanted to buy a tablet. This is totally germane to this too. It's funny. She wanted to collect recipes, but she wanted to get a tablet that could print. And I said, why do you need a tablet that can print? This is another classic example of like old way of thinking, Yeah. And she said, well, I got to get the recipe out of the tablet. I said, what are you talking about? Get the recipe out of the tablet. I said, first of all, you should be writing these things in some kind of a Evernote or OneNote or some service that you can access from whatever device you may have over time. But a tablet, I said, when and where are you going to use this recipe? I don't understand. And she said, well, obviously a couple of times a month at most. I mean, in the kitchen, And I said, well, a tablet is a device that you can take in the kitchen. Why does it have to come off? Why would you want to print it? That's crazy. Like, you're going to print it?
And do what? Like, put it in a file.
Yeah, and keep it in a box.
Yeah.
Like, what? But again, my sister is from my generation. This is the way we did it with PCs for years and years and years.
You had it on the computer and you print it out and put it in the file. Well, here's a great example, okay? Scanners and fax machines still exist.
Yep, sure.
My wife had to fax her contract over for her job, okay? And she was in this panic. Well, is the printer working? Nope, you can't print. Can I scan on there? It's not connected. What am I going to do? Here's a great idea. This is what you're going to do. I took my phone, put it up against it, took a picture, emailed it to her.
Yeah.
Done deal.
Sure.
Everything's done. It's not the greatest quality, but it's just sitting in a file. Who cares? Here, it's signed. I came close enough where all the letters were there. It looked like I printed it. It blew her mind.
You should have done an Instagram thing to it, and she would have thought it came off a Polaroid.
Yeah, I could have, right? I could have made it a little yellow and everything. But
right.
It's interesting.
This is clearly a very old document.
We're talking about, times changing. Fax machines still exist. People tell you to fax all the time. My insurance company has to fax over. They go, can we fax over your latest registration, the insurance card for your car? And I go, no, just email it to me. And it's like I'm speaking a different language. They still want to use a fax machine when you could simply just email it. That's the amazing thing to me.
I haven't needed to fax something in a long, long time.
Yeah, you know what? When is the last time?
We have fax capability here. So
when is the last time you faxed something?
Geez. I mean, to be honest, we've received more faxes than we've sent in the past, couple of years. I don't know. Yeah. I've had to sign something and fax it back, that kind of thing. I don't remember what it was. Something for the bank, probably.
It's interesting how, that's still relevant. Like, why can't you just email it?
But it's obviously on the way out. I mean, it's not a activity. I mean, years and years ago, when I was a kid, I remember going to my dad's work and being impressed by two things. He had a fax machine, those kind of weird yellow thermal papers that would eventually, the print would just fade over time because it was so cheap. I was blown away by this capability. And the other one was this was very leading edge in the 80s. He had a color, like I think it was called, I almost called it a mimeograph machine, a color copier, I guess we would call it, which was not, because back then it was like black and white mostly. Like when you went to school, they had like black and white copiers.
Sure.
And he had like a color one, which is ludicrous today because obviously whatever.
Everything's in color.
But this is a long time ago. Maybe it was even the 70s. I don't remember, but it was just such a, and now these things are just ludicrous. No one needs these things.
My my wife's grandfather is like, can I fax you something? And I'm like, I don't have a fax. They go, what do you mean you don't have a fax? You need to have a fax machine. I need to fax something. He at Thanksgiving, this is the same guy that uses the iPad to take. So he had his iPad, and this is just the best picture ever. He has his iPad too. He has the case attached to the iPad with the keyboard hanging.
Okay.
The Bluetooth keyboard. So this gigantic thing, it's about this big. He's snapping a picture with it. And I turned to him and I whispered, and I went to his ear and I said, if I see you taking pictures with that thing, I'm going to put you in a home.
Right.
And he looked at me and I said, I'm not joking. You have to stop. You have a camera. You have to stop.
Right.
And I just walked away. I warned him, Paul. I may have to put him away if it continues using the iPad.
I recommend it, yes.
Yeah. But you know why he likes it? It's all in the cloud. That's why he does it, because he says, it goes, I upload it to iCloud and it's there. So, I mean, that kind of goes full circle. I mean, I think people are now getting used to this concept of, you know what, it may not be the best quality. That's why camera phones exist. But I could actually take a picture and just send it, to this magical place.
We need to get over this sort of fixation on things, physical things, all right? I mean, it should be dumb to anyone now. 10, 15 years ago, you could have driven in your car to Best Buy and bought WinZip in a box.
Isn't that crazy?
It's stupid.
Well, couldn't you go buy, you could buy Linux, you could buy Internet Explorer, right, at one point?
Sure, probably. I'm just saying, we've gotten to the point where Office is now delivered as a service. Windows basically is delivered as a service. Actually is, I should say. I just did this. You get a computer that has Windows on it. I upgraded it to Windows 8 over the internet, right? The whole thing took like 20 minutes. It's hilarious.
So let me ask you this. What do you think the next thing is to head to the cloud? I mean, we're not buying operating systems anymore. We're not going to the store to buy them. You could easily download it, and it does it all over there automatically. What's the next big thing to kind of move over? We've gotten our images there. We got video there. We've gotten email. So
I actually don't think there's a next big thing. I think it's more of a cleaning up of the mess now. I talked about that SkyDrive thing where, it's great that I can get my photos up in SkyDrive, but now what do I do with it? To be honest, it's not completely Microsoft's fault that I can't get that stuff on my TV. SkyDrive has an incredible API that developers can use to write apps that run on whatever, I was just thinking about this, taking it a step further. When the iPhone first came out, they were talking about, remember, web apps. That was the only way that third parties could get apps on the thing. We all complained and everyone bitched and moaned about it. There are people who still believe that Apple planned all along to have an app store and that was just a thing that they weren't ready. That's not true. In fact, that's in the Steve Jobs book. Their plan was web apps. And so responding to complaints, they created an app infrastructure and a store, and obviously that's been hugely successful. And we're all really taken with apps right now. But it's funny, they are so many times, we're on to something very early, which is that web apps are incredibly mature now. Google has a web app store called the Chrome Web Store. You can write web apps that are native apps for Windows 8. You can write apps for Windows 8 in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. This stuff is like first class all of a sudden. And the thing that's exciting about that is that stuff is either directly applicable across platforms or is much easier to port. Whereas if you write an app for iOS, porting that to Android, porting that to Windows Phone,
it's going to be a pain.
Unless it's a game, is really very difficult. You're basically starting over from scratch, except for what the stuff we used to call business logic back in the day.
Well, we have that same problem. I'll give you a perfect example. We want to create an app for the GFK network so you can watch all the shows and you could chat. And we've been developing it for like 6 months. And it's a slow development because I'm unhappy with everything. But the biggest discussion that we have is, how are we going to get this to Android? I have to find an Android developer. And how are we going to get this to a Windows Phone? I have to get a Windows Phone developer.
Based on my own experience doing that before through Penton, I can tell you that it's not a good idea.
It's not, no.
Because now you've created a situation where you're going to want to improve these things, and you're basically improving 3 completely different apps, completely different teams of people, completely different sets of APIs and different capabilities and so forth.
Oh, it's a mess.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
And you make a single version of the in a web experience that works on mobile devices, and maybe two versions if you wanted like a tablet version, whatever, and it just works. And frankly, that's kind of a better deal. The other thing is, because of the type of content that you're creating, you're basically talking about syndicating video and so forth, and there are infrastructures for that. Getting your podcasts through the podcast app on iOS is probably a much better way to get that content than through yet another native app. Because I don't think a lot of people turn on their iPad or their Surface or their Windows 8 computer and say, I want Andrew Zarian's app, or I want Paul Thurrott's app. They're like, I want to watch something or listen to something.
Yeah.
And there are already infrastructures in place for that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we do phenomenal on Stitcher when people ask us, "Oh, how can we listen to your show on a mobile phone?" I go, "Get Stitcher."
Yeah.
Download the Stitcher app, put in What the Tech. It's right there. All the shows are there. Sounds great. It's an easy app. And you know what? If you don't like what I'm talking about, you can go and find another app.
Right.
But you know what's fascinating? That has come a long way. If you look at how it was on like the Trio, do you remember the Trio? Palm had an app store, and it wasn't their store; it was some other company, and you would literally have to buy the application for like $20.
Oh, so you buy apps?
You buy the app for
Sure.
$20, and then they would send you a confirmation email with a link and a product key, and that's how you bought apps.
Yeah, it's a different world.
And look how that's evolved. I mean, the same app now, I guarantee you, if there is the same app, it's probably 99 cents in an app store, and that's it. I mean, rather than $30.
Yeah, I really think that the big change that needs to happen is just a finishing of the job across the board. I obviously work in the Microsoft space. I can point out things there that I think are issues, and that's just where I'm at. But I mean, you could look, I'm sure this is true across anything. If you're a Google user and you look at Google Play, or you're an Amazon guy and you have a Kindle and you look at that stuff, I mean, there's all these little things that need to be fixed. And I think that's what's going to happen. And it's cross-platform support, that I think we're going to ease into this world of the future that's heterogeneous, and there are going to be a number of major platforms, and that this stuff needs to just work across them,
Yeah.
The stuff that was important in the past, like, there's all this stupid stuff we used to do on PCs that some people probably still do. Like, I'm going to run the disk defragmenter today to make sure that thing's up to date, and run the utility that makes sure there's no baloney, extra files on my computer, and run all those third-party utilities to look for viruses and stuff. It's like, it's all this like crazy maintenance stuff that is not the reason we're using a computer. It's like, this was supposed to make life easier, not give me an extra career on the side that I don't get paid for, where all I do is manage everything. And that's what all of this media is. The photographs that we have in books, and the CDs we have in cases, and the movies we have on videotape or on DVD or on Blu-ray or whatever is just stuff. And as you move this into the digital world, in the beginning you do it yourself, and then you manage it. You're giving yourself a job.
See, I'm a big fan of Dropbox. What would you say is the best universal solution for cloud, I guess, backup or cloud computing that you could recommend? I mean, I tell people, listen, Dropbox is the best one. You could actually tell it to back this folder up. You could actually tell it, set it up like this. It's the simplest, and it's on all platforms. If you have, it's on your phone, it's on the Mac, it's on Windows, so it kind of covers everything. That's why I go with Dropbox.
Yeah.
But what would you recommend? I mean, if
I actually use and I like and recommend SkyDrive, and it too is on all of the platforms. On Windows, which is what I use primarily for my day-to-day work stuff, it goes beyond the mobile app stuff, and it does that sync thing, which is what you're talking about, the Dropbox stuff, where, and of course they're making it more sophisticated. So I like and use and would recommend SkyDrive, but I think these things are all pretty much comparable. And that's the point, right? That, it's like iOS, Surface, Android, Dropbox, SkyDrive, whatever else, Amazon Cloud Player, Google Music, or iTunes Match. I mean, these things are, this is how it's going to be. We're going to have choices. And I think that you can get a little weird about it and say, well, I don't like this because it doesn't have this, or I don't like this because it doesn't have this, and all that kind of stuff. But I think these things are all roughly comparable, or will be soon, and I think that's how it's going to fall out. I think we're basically going to have this some number of choices, in each of these markets.
It's 5:09 here on the East Coast. That means we've been doing the show for an hour.
Yes, it is.
And it's time to wrap up the show. But I mean, it was a fascinating discussion because I'm really invested in cloud at this point. And I'm still slowly. I mean, listen, I hoard my pictures still, and I just started literally maybe 3 weeks ago. I just started putting everything on the cloud, and I feel so relieved because every time I need to format the Mac, or by the way, one thing I'm never going to let go. I still format every 6 months.
Oh yeah,
I'm one of these guys.
By the way, so I format frequently as well, and I justify it by saying that I test software for a living. This is what I do, right? But the truth is, I don't actually know why I have to do it. I don't do it on a schedule. I don't know if that's what you mean, like if you literally do it on a schedule.
What, like
I do
formatting
it because
or backing up?
The formatting stuff. Like you start, you blow away your computer and start over from scratch.
What I do whenever I feel like things are getting cluttered and it's too much or it's getting a little slow, I don't want to, or if I'll give you an example. I had a problem on one of my computers where the sound card driver wasn't working right. So rather than spending 4 hours to fix the stupid sound card, I just blew it all away.
So
and I started over, and guess what? I didn't care because I my pictures are on the cloud, my videos are on the cloud, and whatever else, my email. So it doesn't really matter. I have nothing to back up.
Yeah, no,
Bookmarks.
that's how I do it as well. In other words, I reach a point with a computer where I've had enough problems with it where I say enough. You'll blow this thing away. I just did this with the I bought back in August, I guess, a 15-inch Ultrabook from Microsoft Store. Put Windows 8 on it. Proceeded to go on all these trips, traveled a lot. And when I got back at the beginning of August, I blew it away and restored Windows 7, upgraded to Windows 8, put all my stuff on it. And then I went on that crazy 2-week thing. Somewhere in the middle of that trip, something started going wrong. I would get this dialog box that would come up and say, we need to restart the computer to complete this task, whatever it was. Click OK. And you'd reboot it, and it would just keep coming back. Like it was never, ever going to be okay. And so just the other day, I reset it again. But, because I'm so set in my ways, I don't think I did it the right way. I actually went back. I restored it back to Windows 7. It's got the signature image on there, which I love. Upgraded that to Windows 8, just like before. Started installing applications and everything. And then after I did all that, I realized this thing has PC reset. I could have just reset Windows 8 now, and the thing would have been done in like 10 minutes. I didn't do it. I actually did it the old-fashioned way instead of the right way because I, too, I have to remind myself constantly that there are better ways of doing things.
There are better ways. And I wanted to bring this up, but I didn't get a chance. But to remote access into someone's computer has gotten so easy.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking like, you could get access. I'm saying the actual function of it. We use TeamViewer here all the time. Right. And it's gotten so simple where I don't need to, let's say we have a show on at 9 o'clock and I'm in my bedroom and I'm drinking, because that's where I do most of my drinking, in bed, and then I cry. It's an every night thing here. Sure. I don't actually have to come down the stairs and set the studio up and actually say, okay, you know what? I got to pull up the video here. I have to do it here. I either have Suncast, which produces a lot of our shows, do it, or if he's not available, guess what? I just TeamViewer in from my Mac to my main machine, and I set the guy up over Skype, and here we go. The show's on.
Right.
And it's so simple now. And guess what? That's doing it over the cloud. It's remote access.
Sure.
Something that we've been doing for many years. So, I mean, every function of computing has become simplified or convenient.
Right.
Because of the cloud. So the people that are holding out, people that are still, and listen, I understand it. It's cool to have everything here. Paul and I have had crazy discussions about ID3 tagging.
Yeah. You could just expand that to everything else in your life, and that's what it's like to manage a computer, or computers.
I mean, I organize everything, and that's why I have my files. But you know what? The day's going to come where, let's say the computer breaks, you drop it, something happens, and if you lose those files, you are so screwed, and you're going to regret not, using whatever service.
I think I'm working to. I'm going to call this a New Year's resolution. I haven't quite arrived at what it is exactly, but we're getting close, so I might as well. I think that my resolution for this coming year is going to be. This is a tough thing. I shouldn't say it this way, but it's like zero data. In other words, I have been escalating my hard drive storage locally for years and years and years, gone through various servers and everything. I think my goal is going to be to get rid of all of it.
Now, I haven't asked you this, but the first time you came on GFQ as a guest, you were talking about you had home server set up and you had all your files and you were doing terabytes of transfers to that new home server. Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
You are?
Yep.
So, I mean, you still have not let go.
Well, yes and no. The truth is, you know how it is, like, we how do I say this? Like, you have some set of clothes, might be a good example. I do this every year. We do a home swap. I bring clothes with me on the trip, obviously. But the people use my house, so I put my other clothes into these bins, and I put them in a storage space, and they don't have to worry about them. When I come home, the bins come out, but they sit there in the corner of my bedroom. And those bins have been there since the end of August. I have not needed any of the clothes that I packed away. So why do I hold on to those clothes? Like, I should just get rid of those clothes, right? That's a kind of a technique. You know, if you put something in storage and you let it sit for X amount of time and you never, ever need it or even think about it, you know, maybe you should get rid of it, right? That's a technique. So my home server, which is now actually like a Windows Essential server, but whatever home server we'll call it, is sort of the same thing. I do access it from time to time. I do have a video collection on there. You know, my photos are on there. My music is there. I never use it from there. My data archive going back to 1990, whatever, is on there. But, you know, I never access any of it. It's there. It's replicated. It's backing up to the cloud, I guess. I mean, I assume it is. But I don't really use it. And that's what I mean. In other words, I need to get rid of it, you know? Like, I need to move to the next level. You know, and just put it in the cloud.
I think we're gonna totally leave. You know, like you said, zero data. I think that's gonna happen when our operating systems are, you know, data wise and application wise, 90% on the cloud.
Think about it like a couple of. Let me think back. The last. Let me think, I'm not sure if this is technically true, but I want to say the last non-Ultrabook laptop that I bought, I think, was a Lenovo ThinkPad Edge 420S or something like that. It's about an inch thick, decently portable, blah, blah, blah. Actually, that one came with an SSD, so that's not correct. Well, the one before that was the last one I bought that had a hard drive. It probably came with like a 500 gigabyte hard drive, something like that.
Yeah.
You go from that to a 128 gigabyte SSD. You go from that to a Surface, which could have 32 or 64 gigabytes of storage, or an iPad that could have 16 or 32 or 64 gigs of storage, or whatever, you know, a Nexus, some other Android thing, same thing, right? We have gone down with local storage.
Oh, to an extreme. I mean, it's an extreme.
To an extreme, which if you had said to me a couple of years ago, Paul, you're going to have a tablet or a device that is a computer that has a keyboard that attaches to it that runs Office. It's going to have 32 gigs of storage on it. What do you think about that? I would have thought that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, let's go with 16.
Ludicrous.
I mean, right? There are people out there, their iPads are their everyday computers. This is all that they use. They have an iPad. They have
so
a
how
keyboard.
do they get away with it?
And, you know, and we've laughed about this. The guy's typing on glass, but they get their iPod. They get their Bluetooth dock. They have you know, they're using their touch screen with this. And they're using it as if it's a computer. They're not You never hear them say, "Oh my God, I'm running out of hard drive space." No. That never happens.
I think this is the goal, you know, to make this stuff okay. And there are people still who will complain about phones. Like I bought I should say I didn't buy it, a HTC Windows Phone 8X. It has 16 gigs of storage. I wrote it up. I love this thing. It's great. Blah blah blah. And I get email from people say, I can't buy that thing. It doesn't have expandable storage. It doesn't have at least 32 gigs of storage. My music collection is like 30 gigs big. It's completely unusable. And it's like, seriously. Like, what? Why? How could you possibly need that much storage? And when are you playing all of this music? Never. Do you have any idea how long it would take to play 32 gigabytes of music? I mean, if I look at actually, I can tell you. If I look at iTunes, for example, because iTunes tells you that. If you go into music and you go to
let me tell you my library. I just downsized my library, okay? I deleted a ton of stuff. I have 47 gigs.
Right.
And I have 8,700 items. I went down from maybe 12,000 and prior to that maybe 14,000.
Okay. And how many do you have iTunes?
I do.
What does it say?
25 days.
25 days.
Yeah.
I have 5,000 items, roughly, 14.1 days, 40 gigabytes. I'm sorry, but I am never going to play most of this music, right? I'm just not. And by the way, like you, that was carefully curated down. Like I actually did something that I now consider stupid, which was I went to every single album, played the music, rated them 1 through 5 stars, and then the stuff that was 2 or 1 star, I deleted it.
Yeah, look, this is my library.
But I still have 40 gigabytes of music.
I mean, when is the next time I'm going to listen to Webster Hall, DJ John Sugla?
I don't know. But let me ask you
ever.
something. When is the next time you're going to listen to that on your phone? Because for some reason, you needed to sync that to your smartphone. So it was with you at all times because you had to have.
Yeah. No, I mean,
you got it. This is someone said letting go of my library collection of games, I assume. And no, he means music. And going stream only was great. Right. That's what I do on my phone. I stream. And I use Xbox. Actually, I use Xbox Music Pass. I do download a couple of things. I download a couple podcasts because, I could be on the road and want to listen to a podcast, whatever. A couple audiobooks through Audible. I do that. In fact, that's how I was listening to the Steve Jobs book last night in the car. But, I mean, I don't need every 80s song ever made or the part of my music collection that is like my daughter's music, which I cannot stand for the most part, or whatever.
But, I mean, you could technically, I could technically take my songs and put it on iCloud, right? Through iTunes. I could do that.
You can and you should.
And I'm going to say something, and I'm a Mac user. I have a MacBook. I don't feel bad for it. I like having a MacBook, I've told you why, and I've explained this. I think it's extremely pretty. It's an i7, and I like it.
I don't understand your insane hatred of iTunes Match, though.
No, not iTunes. I hate iCloud. I don't get it.
Really?
I'm missing something. I don't understand it. I don't use it. It's confusing to me. It hasn't worked the X amount of times that I've tried to use it. I
actually think that stuff works pretty well.
I'm one of the only people that cannot use it. Like, there's no, like, how do I get to iCloud on the Mac? I
don't use a Mac, so I don't really care. But what do you mean by that? Like in other words, you're looking. Let me guess. What you're looking for is like a SkyDrive type thing, or what do you call it, Dropbox?
Yeah.
Where you go. Yeah. So that's not how they do it. So Apple does it from like an experience basis. In other words, they're not giving you like a Finder based like way to navigate around iCloud. You go into iTunes and it's just there. You go into iPhoto and it's just there. You go into I don't know what else.
No, but see, I don't want that. I actually want to go to iCloud and sync myself. But
do not put me in the embarrassing position of defending Apple.
Yeah. Please defend Apple.
But I actually think it's pretty good, so I'm not really sure.
I mean, and I have 15 gigs. I have 14.99 gigs on iCloud that I have not used. I have open 14.99, so I've used virtually nothing on iCloud. And I just don't. It doesn't register with me for whatever reason. I can't understand why. Photo stream. Okay, let's back up. Shared photo stream and my photos. Okay, so now I'm going to back up my photos. Wow, I'm backing up my photos. Okay. I just set it up, Paul. I just did it.
See how easy it is? And I don't know what you're complaining about.
How much is it for 50 gigs? I'm just curious with iCloud.
I have no idea.
Yeah, change storage plan. Because if I could put all my MP3s there, 20 gigs, it's $100 a year. That's a lot of money. I paid $2,200 for this laptop. I can't afford the $100. But it's interesting. Like one more thing, and then we'll wrap it up because we're going off. I use Google Docs all the time.
Yep.
And I use Google Docs because I don't have Office installed on this computer, and on the Mac version of the latest Office, has it been released?
I'm sorry, say that again. The Mac.
What's the latest version for the Mac for Office?
It's still the old, whatever
the old one.
2011, I think is the version.
And that one doesn't do the cloud stuff, does it?
Well, okay, so it's been a while since I've looked at the Mac stuff, but I believe, and actually I know there is a SkyDrive app for the Mac, and so it does that same kind of syncing you're talking about with Dropbox, and obviously by just putting your Word documents and other Office documents in SkyDrive and then pointing Office at those files. That works.
Okay.
I mean,
So I've been using Google Drive, and I use Google Docs, and it works great for me because like right now, Paul and I are doing the notes, and we're sharing it over Google Docs, and I like doing that. I know as far as converting files go, like if I have to open up an Excel file, I have to cross my fingers and pray to whatever God controls this because it may or may not line up or work. I understand that and I accept it, but Google Docs has made my life totally easy, and I've put all my documents on the cloud. If I delete something or I forget to back it up, I don't worry about it. And that just shows you how easy it's become, and you really don't think about it anymore. So please, everybody, use Google Docs.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
the iCloud stuff that you're talking about would be the same thing if you had a Mac. I'm not advocating using a Mac at all, but if I did use a Mac, I would certainly use iCloud because what you're describing is exactly how that works across all that stuff: photos, music, documents, whatever. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't.
I don't know. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe someone after the show could explain iCloud to me.
You can't just use some Apple stuff. You have to use all Apple stuff.
Oh, is that how it works?
That's my life mantra.
Oh, okay.
You have to.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So sorry. But we should wrap it up.
Yes, actually, I do have to get going.
Yeah.
So,
Paul, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
I could go on about this forever, obviously.
Hey, guys, people are telling me that my audio is a little off. Yes, I know. Paul's audio, and it's gotten a little weird here because we got this new system. Telos was gracious enough to come here. Kirk came here to the studio. We installed an unbelievable console. We're still tweaking the audio. If it sounds funny, if there's any issues, if there's anything happening, send us an email. Let me know so we could, continue to tweak it. It's absolutely pretty. It's not only pretty, but it's an unbelievable system. And it is involved with tech because it's all IP-based. It's all IP-driven, which is unbelievable. There's no audio cables going around the studio. So send us an email, guysfromqueens@gmail.com. I try to get back to each and every one of you. It sometimes gets hard. I did have an email today, Paul. Before we wrap up, can I read you this email?
Yep. Sure.
You got haters. I don't know if you know that. That's what
I
the
do
kids
know
say.
that.
But the kids say haters.
Okay.
A gentleman by the name of Doug wrote, "Has Paul ever pitched the idea of changing the show's name to I Hate All Things Apple?" Yes, he has, actually.
Actually, I that's weird to me because I've never. I mean, aside from what we just discussed today, where I went on and on.
I mean, you're pretty pro about some of the stuff.
I
that
would
Apple does.
say I'm pretty fair.
Yeah.
I think is the way I would describe it. So I'm not really sure what to say.
So I got that email,
Okay.
and it has been discussed in meetings.
Oh yeah, all the time.
We've obviously decided not to do it, but
well,
but send me your emails.
You never know.
It might have. Maybe for 2013, we may change it.
We'll get there.
WinSupersite.com is the website for all things Paul Thurrott. It's actually one of the first sites I go to every day, Paul, and I'm not just saying that because we do a show together. I actually visit WinSupersite every morning, and I go through the stories, and I actually read your blog posts because there's substance there, unlike many other blogs that just write nonsense.
Okay.
Like right now, Windows 8 tip, get Media Center for free. Great tip for people that have Windows 8. Also, if you miss any portion of the show, you could go to our website, gfknetwork.com. Something is burning in my kitchen, and I have no idea what. So we're going to find out. gfknetwork.com is the website. You could catch all our shows there. We have 15 different shows a week. If you miss any portion of this, of course, subscribe to us on iTunes, on Windows Phone. I believe we're featured right now on Windows Phone. And I believe in the podcast section, we're like one of the first shows there. So subscribe to us. We have an audio and video format for the show. And send me your emails, like I said. And until next time, guys, we'll see you next time on What the Tech. Good night.